lost my husband and the people I trusted turned against me. The morning my life changed. Hi everyone, my name is Naledi. I've gone back and forth for a long time about telling this story. Some days I tell myself I'm strong enough to carry it alone. Other days, the memories come back so loudly that I feel like they might crush me if I don't let them out. So today, I'm letting them out. This is the story of how I lost my husband, and how, in the middle of that loss, the people I thought would protect me turned against me. Daniel was my husband, my best friend, the person who knew how I liked my tea in the morning and how I needed silence when I was overwhelmed. He was the person who could look at me across a room and understand exactly what I was feeling without me saying a word. We weren't perfect. No marriages, but we were solid. We had routines. We had inside jokes. We had plans. And then one morning, all of that disappeared. The call came early, too early. I remember the light in the room was still soft. The kind of light that tells you it's still safe to sleep. Daniel had left for work the day before like he always did. He kissed my forehead. He told me he'd see me later. I never saw him again. When my phone rang, I almost ignored it. My body was heavy with sleep. I thought it might be spam, or a wrong number, or someone who didn't know the time. I answered anyway, and everything stopped. I don't remember every word that was said on that call. I just remember the tone. That serious, careful tone people use when they're about to destroy your world. They said Daniel's name. They said there had been an accident. They said he was gone. Gone. Such a small word for something so final. I remember sitting up in bed, trying to understand what I was hearing. I remember saying, no, over and over again, as if saying it enough times would make it true. My chest tightened. My hands started shaking. The phone slipped from my fingers and hit the floor. I slid down the bed and sat on the cold tiles, hugging my knees. I couldn't scream. I couldn't cry. I just kept whispering his name. Daniel, 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 as if he might hear me. The hours after that feel unreal now, like something I watched happen to someone else. People came to the house, family, friends. Voices filled the rooms, but I felt completely alone. Everyone kept saying, be strong. God knows best. He's in a better place. I wanted to scream at them. I didn't want him in a better place. I wanted him here. I wanted him alive. I wanted him sitting on the couch, complaining about the news, asking me what we were having for supper. But I said nothing. I just nodded. I stared. I let the words wash over me without really entering my heart. Daniel's parents arrived later that day. Before all of this, I had respected them deeply. I had tried to be a good daughter-in-law. I helped where I could. I showed up. I listened. I truly believed we cared about each other. When they walked into the house, his mother collapsed into tears. His father stood stiff, his jaw tight, his eyes red but dry. I stood there, not knowing what to do. Was I supposed to comfort them? Were they supposed to comfort me? We were all broken. But somehow, even in that moment, I felt something shift. At the funeral, I moved like a shadow. People hugged me. They held my hands. They told me stories about Daniel. I listened politely. But inside, I felt numb. I watched them lower his coffin into the ground. I watched dirt cover the man I loved. And something inside me died with him. After the funeral, when everyone went back to their lives, that's when the real silence began. The house felt wrong without him. Too quiet. Too empty. I slept on his side of the bed some nights. Other nights, I avoided it completely. I would wake up reaching for him. I would hear his voice in my dreams and wake up with tears on my pillow. Grief isn't loud all the time. Sometimes it's very quiet. Sometimes it sits in your chest and makes it hard to breathe. That's when things with my in-laws started to change. At first, it was subtle. Small looks, short answers, a different tone. I tried to ignore it. I told myself they were grieving too. That pain makes people behave strangely. But soon, it became impossible to ignore. I noticed how his mother would watch me when I moved around the house, how his father would sigh when I spoke. One afternoon, his mother asked me, "Why are you wearing that?" I looked down at my clothes. A simple dress, nothing inappropriate. I laughed nervously and asked what she meant. She didn't answer. She just looked away. Another day, I sat in Daniel's usual chair without thinking. His father cleared his throat loudly and said, "That was Daniel's place." I stood up immediately, my face burning with embarrassment. I felt like a guest in my own grief. I started questioning myself constantly. Was I doing something wrong? Was I not mourning the right way? Was I supposed to look sad all the time? Was I allowed to smile? I tried to make myself smaller, quieter, more agreeable. I thought if I was gentle enough, kind enough, respectful enough, things would go back to normal. But they didn't. One morning, I decided to make breakfast. It felt like the right thing to do. Something familiar, something grounding. I cooked the way I always had, the way Daniel liked. When I placed the plates on the table, no one said thank you. Instead, his mother tasted the food and frowned. "You put too much salt," she said. I apologized immediately. Then she added, "Daniel never liked it like this." That hurt more than I expected, because I knew that wasn't true. I had cooked for him for years. I knew his tastes. I knew the way he liked his food, his routines, his habits. But I didn't argue. I just swallowed the lump in my throat and sat quietly. That was the moment I realized something important. I wasn't just grieving my husband anymore. I was grieving my place in his family. And this was only the beginning. After the funeral, the house felt heavier than before. Not because the walls had changed, not because the air was different, but because the absence of Daniel was a weight that no one could lift. At first, I tried to maintain some routine. I cooked meals even if I had no appetite. I cleaned the house even if it felt pointless. I spoke to Daniel's parents politely, even if every word they said cut me in ways I couldn't name. But their behavior didn't improve. It grew colder, sharper. Invisible walls formed around me. I remember the first time I noticed it. I had brewed tea for his mother carefully, exactly how Daniel had liked it when we visited them together. I carried the tray into the lounge, helping to share a small moment of kindness. I placed it down and smiled softly. Her eyes barely flicked to me. She took a sip, paused, and said, "This is too strong. Are you sure you measured it right?" I nodded, holding back tears. I followed the recipe Daniel always used. I whispered. She didn't respond. That day, I understood something painful. No act of love could protect me from their judgment. And then came the money. It wasn't a large inheritance, just a small savings account. Daniel had left for me enough to help me breathe for a while, to pay bills, to buy groceries. I had thought it was private. I had thought it was mine. But suddenly, it wasn't. His father asked questions every time I spent anything. "Do you really need that? Are you sure this is wise?" His mother added small remarks, the kind that sting slowly. Daniel wouldn't have approved of this. I began to feel like a child again. The very idea of financial freedom, something I had never taken lightly, now seemed like a crime. And grief. Grief became a battlefield, not just with my own heart, which ached unbearably, but with the family I had once trusted. I found myself walking on eggshells, choosing my words carefully, swallowing anger and sadness alike. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, Daniel's empty chair across from me. I had been sorting some old photos, pictures of our holidays, birthdays, simple lazy mornings, and suddenly everything felt unbearable. I stood up, pacing the living room. I realized I hadn't eaten properly all day. I hadn't allowed myself to cry properly either. I was trying to be strong for everyone else, but no one seemed to notice my struggle. That was when I snapped. I went to his parents' room. I could feel the tension in my chest, the tight knot in my stomach. My hands were shaking. I said the words I had held inside for so long. I loved your son. I am grieving. I am trying to live my life. But your words, your silence, your judgment, it makes this unbearable. Please, I am not your enemy. I am his wife. Let me grieve. They said nothing, nothing at all. I felt small, invisible, and yet a strange, quiet strength started to grow inside me. I realized then that no one could control my grief. No one could dictate how I felt, how I mourned, how I moved forward. Not even the people who had brought me into their family. The next day, I stayed with a friend. I needed air. I needed space. I needed someone to see me, really see me, and not judge me for living, for breathing, for existing without Daniel at my side. During that time, I began to write letters. I wrote to Daniel as though he were still there. I wrote about the breakfast I had made, the small arguments I had with his parents, the pain of walking past his empty chair. I wrote about my tears, my fears, and my tiny victories, the small moments when I remembered to eat, when I smiled, when I stepped outside. It was my lifeline. And slowly, in those quiet moments of reflection, I started understanding something essential. I had been through the most. I had lost a husband, a partner, a friend. I had faced judgment and coldness from the people who should have supported me. I had confronted my own despair, and yet I was still standing. I was learning, slowly, that surviving didn't mean I had to forget. It didn't mean I had to forgive immediately, though perhaps one day I would. It meant that I could honor Daniel's memory without letting their behavior break me. So I began setting boundaries, small ones at first. I would not engage in conversations that made me feel small. I would politely decline criticism of my choices. I would carve out space for myself, even if they complained or whispered behind my back. Each day, it became easier to breathe, to cook for myself, for my needs, to walk in the garden, even if it felt empty, to sit in Daniel's chair for a moment and cry, and then stand up again. And slowly, very slowly, I felt a shift inside. Not because his parents changed, not because the house felt warmer, but because I stopped letting their anger, their judgment, their control dictate my life. I realized I had been carrying more than grief. I had been carrying expectations, their expectations, the weight of how a widow should act, the unspoken rules about what I could or couldn't do. And I decided, finally, that I didn't have to carry that anymore. The days after I set my boundaries were strange. Strange because, for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of control. I woke up in the mornings and, for a moment, I remembered that my life, my choices, were mine again. Daniel's parents didn't like it. Oh, they whispered. They complained. They questioned my every move. But now, I didn't flinch. I just nodded politely and walked away. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a meal. I actually wanted to eat something I had craved but hadn't dared make. His mother peeked in and raised an eyebrow. You really think Daniel would approve of this? I paused, knife in hand. I could feel the tension building in the room. Then I smiled, the kind of smile that says I don't care anymore, and said, I'm not cooking for Daniel right now. I'm cooking for me. Her face went pale. I knew I had crossed some invisible line, and I loved it. That evening, I took a long walk. The streets were quiet. The sun was dipping low, painting everything in gold. I could feel the memories hitting me all at once. Daniel's laughter, the way he used to hold my hand, the sound of his voice whispering my name. And I cried. I let myself cry loud, ugly, raw tears. I let the pain wash over me. But when I finally stopped, I realized something remarkable. I could breathe again. I could remember without breaking completely. I could live without forgetting him. Then came the day I discovered something that finally lit a fire in me. Daniel's father, in one of his rare moments of speaking directly to me, said, "You need to stop spending that money. It's not yours." Something snapped inside me. I slammed the cupboard door. My voice, for the first time in months, came out sharp and unwavering. "This money is all I have. Daniel left it for me, not for you, not for anyone else. And I will spend it as I need to survive, not to please you, not to beg for your approval. I loved your son. I still love him, but I am not your property, and I will not be treated like one." The silence that followed was deafening. His mother's lips pressed together. His father looked away. For a moment, I realized I had finally drawn the line. Life didn't suddenly get easier after that. No, some days it felt heavier. Some nights I woke screaming, reaching for a body that wasn't there. I missed him with every part of me, but the space I had carved for myself gave me a strength I didn't know I possessed. I began reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in months. I joined a support group for widows. I met women who had been through unimaginable losses. Women who had stared at emptiness and come out with fire in their hearts. Listening to their stories, I began to feel less alone. Less like I was the only one fighting through this chaos. At home, I found small joys again. I baked bread because the smell reminded me of simpler times. I danced in the kitchen to music Daniel had loved, spinning alone, letting the house shake with laughter that wasn't forced. I wrote letters to him, tucked them in his drawer, and read them aloud when no one was around. It was silly, maybe, but it felt like keeping a piece of him with me safe, untouchable. And yes, the in-laws still tried. They whispered, they judged, they watched, but I didn't care anymore. Their power over me was gone. I had survived the worst, and I realized I could survive anything. One night, I sat in Daniel's chair, a cup of tea in hand, looking at the photos on the wall. I whispered to the empty room, "I'm doing okay. I'm living. I'm still me. And I'm honoring you the only way I know how, by surviving, by loving, by not letting anyone dim my life." I realized grief doesn't disappear. It doesn't vanish like a cloud in the sky. It becomes part of you, shaping you, molding you into someone stronger, fiercer, and more alive than before. And that's what I had become. So to anyone out there who has felt abandoned, judged, or silenced after loss, your grief is yours. Your peace matters. And no one, not even family, has the right to make you feel guilty for wanting to live. I survived. I loved. I cried. I laughed again. And I will continue to do all of it on my terms. Because losing Daniel taught me the hardest truth of all. Life goes on. People may turn on you. They may try to control you. But the only person you truly need to answer to is yourself. And I will never forget that lesson.